I'm Josh Farley, president of Redline Electric and Solar. Join me as we talk to contractors, business owners, and experts who are willing to share their experiences to help you overcome obstacles when you're taking your business up and to the right. Hey, thanks for joining us. Today we're with Brian Burt. He's a partner at Snell Wilmer and the chair of the Emerging Business Group. Brian, tell us what you do and who you do it for.
Sure. Well, glad to be here. Appreciate the opportunity. So I basically get to spend my days working with entrepreneurs of all shapes and sizes, mostly on the business side. So help them start, grow, and hopefully exit their companies at some point.
Gotcha. How'd you, so everybody wants to know where you got your start. What made you want to become a lawyer?
Well, I was thinking about becoming a doctor, and then I decided I'd switch over kind of at the later stages of high school.
Right.
Always liked to work with companies, did like to argue with people, haven't gone that direction in a litigation standpoint, but just decided it'd be a fun and good fit for kind of my interests. So.
But as a kid, you just want doctor, lawyer, nothing else? It was just, that was it. That was the goal.
It seemed a little easier to go to law school than to go to medical school, so.
Got it.
That was a factor.
Lawyers running your family?
First one.
Nice.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
Thanks.
Let's talk about where you went to school.
So I went to a little liberal arts school called Allegheny College, and then I went off to Harvard for law school and went from there.
Harvard. I mean, just saying the word Harvard makes you feel so much. I mean, for me, I hear Harvard, I'm like, wow, that's pretty cool.
Oh,
was it hard to get in, or like?
It was a little challenging. Yeah, it was a little challenging. Once you get there, I think the hardest thing is getting in.
Got it.
They make it, pretty user friendly once you're there.
Got it. But before it's like private club. You got to
tough.
earn your spot.
Yeah, it's a little tough. I didn't have much fun in college, so.
Gotcha. So being a partner in a law firm, how does that come to fruition?
So it's really a fairly lengthy track. You got to be there for 8 years, sometimes 10, depending on the firm. And the whole purpose of that is to kind of build up your expertise, your skill set in whatever you've chosen to do. For me, it was business law.
Gotcha.
And then the second component, which is becoming increasingly more important, is business development. So you have to show that you have the capacity to generate new client opportunities, maintain those relationships, and build your own practice.
Oh, so you have to develop the business for yourself.
Correct.
I thought you were talking about helping companies develop or starting new companies.
Do that too. But
Gotcha.
Yeah, for in terms of advancement internally, it's really two things: the skill set and then the business development component. And
Gotcha.
Obviously, you got to be successful in helping your clients, or you won't have too many coming back.
Right. So Snell and Wilmer, how long you been there?
Been there about 14 years now.
And they're one of the largest law firms in the Southwest?
We are. We've got about 425 lawyers, about half of which in Phoenix,
Wow.
the other half in the Southwest footprint.
That's a lot. What other things do they do? Everything?
Pretty much everything except help you get divorced. So anything on the business side, we
Right.
work with individuals, companies. I chair the Emerging Business Group, as you mentioned. So there's employment, there's litigation, there's real estate finance, so all the kind of different resources that a company might need as it starts and grows.
So but you can help partners divorce.
No, we don't do family law. It's one thing.
No,
we
but I
start-
mean like business partners.
Business partners.
Business partners.
I do a lot of that. In fact,
Right.
We've got a brother suing a brother right now, so those types of things pop up pretty regularly.
Gotcha. So let's talk about partnerships. Obviously, the best thing that I've seen or I've heard is having set expectations put into place before going into a partnership. But what other things, like contractors, we don't understand. We work on a handshake deal.
Yeah, I mean, kind of the Phoenix handshake deal is pretty, infamous in the legal world, and it's just the nature of, I think, the city and its entrepreneurial culture. It's great for our litigators because it often leads to all sorts of disputes, partnership breakups, fights with customers.
It's good for business.
It's great for us, but not good for you guys.
Right.
So I'm a real big believer in kind of setting a strong legal foundation. Take the time to, A, get to know the partner, make sure you're doing business with or entering into a relationship with an ethical partner. That's
Right.
really important. And secondly, get it in writing. And the thought is that things may change. They typically do. You're going to get into disagreements. But kind of put the roadmap, the rule book, if you will, in place at the front end. Throw it in the drawer. If things work out, you never need to take a look at it. But if they don't, you'll be happy you had that so you can navigate those issues.
Right. No, that's great advice. Let's talk about Arizona being a right-to-work state and what that means. Is it called right-to-work state? I've heard other terms for it.
Yeah, so you're kind of free in Arizona as the business owner to hire and fire at will, unless it's some discriminatory reason. You obviously can't do that. But it also gives you the ability to enforce things like non-competes and non-solicits. So you as a business owner can take steps that you can't take California, for example, and other places, to protect yourself. So if an employee decides to leave, they can't, run out and solicit your customers, or they can't compete with you for a period of time. So it does give you, if you take the time to properly implement it, a lot of nice protections to ensure, the long-term viability of the business.
Gotcha. On a non-compete, what's standard?
There is no standard. That's the,
right.
Yeah,
I mean,
that's the thing. It really depends on you have to look at three pieces. Defining the narrow scope of what they can't do.
right.
So if you're in a given field, you can't exclude someone from doing anything remotely related. It's got to be a specific area. It's not got to be a specific geography. So you can't prevent them from competing globally if you're working in just Phoenix. And it's got to be a reasonable time frame. So it's not a 10-year thing. It might be 6 months. It might be a year. Could even be 2 years. And it depends on the nature of what they're doing for you. The receptionist versus kind of the right-hand person in the business, they're going to have different things that they do and different potential competitive threats if they leave, and so they need to be dealt with accordingly.
Gotcha. Let's talk about why a solid legal foundation is so critical for the long-term success of a business.
Well, as you know, 9 out of 10 businesses, especially in the startup, are going to fail, right? So there's all these risks you can't control. The legal stuff is what you can control.
Is it 9 out of 10?
It is 9 out of 10,
Wow.
yeah. So 9 out of 10, not to scare you, but 9 out of 10.
No, we're past those first early stages, so at least, good
Yeah.
for us.
The startup mode, it's 9 out of 10 go under. Very few survive. And so all those risks that, again, you can't control, it's tough enough to get customers, maintain those relationships, do all that stuff. What you can control, for the most part, are the legal risks. You can put in place agreements and partnership relationships, customer relationships, all those things at the front end as you grow the company. And it's important because not doing that, again, you get back to the handshake thing, there's going to be disagreements with employees, vendors, customers, partners that you own the company with, and you need to have a way to work through those issues
Right.
and make sure people honor those expectations. And without that, you leave it up to the courts to kind of fight it out. It requires so much energy. In fact, when someone calls me and says, you know what, we've got a problem, the minute that happens, you've already spent the money and then some that it would have taken just to get it done on the front end the right way. So, and when you look at selling the company or going through a pretty critical event, maybe a funding event, you're getting some capital, you're getting a loan, those parties, those third parties, are going to look at the company and say, hey, what did they do to protect themselves? Is this a risky venture that I'm investing in or buying? And so at some point, you're going to be called to the mat for that and be held accountable for what you did and didn't do. And the value of the company is going to correlate to the steps you took to protect those things along the way. The more exposure, the less you're going to get when it comes time to sell the company. The better you protected it, the more value. So it just makes sense both short and long term to do that.
So if I was to start another business, what do you is there like a top 10 things I need to put in place, or is there like what would you advise me to do, like first and foremost?
Sure, I think it's just obviously start with a good solid entity, do all the things you need to do to form that entity, often in a limited liability company.
Right.
If you've got a partner, you've got to have an operating agreement or shareholders agreement. You want to make sure if you're raising capital, you do it legally. A lot of folks running around violating the rules, that's a felony if you do
What do you
that.
mean by violating the rules?
So there's federal and state securities laws that come into play if you are raising capital for your business. If you're getting a loan from a commercial bank, different story. But if you're bringing capital like many do,
Yep.
from angel investors or VCs or others, you've got to follow those rules at the federal and state level.
What if my mom wanted to just give me money?
Still need to follow the rules.
What's the rule? What would be the rule on that?
Well, it's really comes down to making sure at the end of the day that she has proper disclosure, right?
Gotcha.
Even though it's mom and people say, well, hey, if it's a family member, that can't matter, right? You still got to follow the rules, and the goal is to make sure she's got an informed decision. If she invests with you, loses all her money, but you told her of the risks, no problem. She probably won't be happy with you, but
Right.
it's not a felony. But when people go out to raise capital, they often don't represent all the challenges and risks associated with it. Tell about the good side, the potential,
Right.
what could happen, but they don't give the full picture. And in short, that's what gets them in trouble.
Got it. What do we have to have as far as in place for employees? Do we need to, obviously an at-will agreement probably would be good.
You have a couple of pieces, really. If you want to take advantage of that at-will relationship, you want to have really an offer letter that outlines the fact that it is an at-will relationship. You talk about what the compensation is, kind of what the starting deal is, if you will, if there's some bonus structures, benefits. And then the second piece of that is really a standalone agreement that makes sure they're protecting your confidential information.
Right.
If they create intellectual property, that you're going to own that. And then, incorporating as appropriate those non-competes, those non-solicitations of your employees and customers. So that two pieces, and then there's employee handbook as you grow the company. At some point, that's appropriate to bring that in the mix. So those three things kind of form your core
Gotcha.
Legal requirements, I think.
And then when you let somebody go in an at-will state, I've learned over the years you don't necessarily have to tell them the reason why. Is that a good solid practice to have in place, or? It's
always a good idea just to call your friendly neighborhood lawyer before you let someone go and get some quick advice. It might take 2 minutes, but saying the wrong thing on the way out, even a lot of times you're intending to be kind.
Right.
It's a tough time for that employee, but just saying the wrong thing can buy you a claim. And so oftentimes, like what you said, just not really giving any detail is unfortunately often the best answer.
So I let somebody go last year, and he came into the office. I said, "Hey, we're letting you go." He looked at me, goes, he was shocked.
Sure.
He looked at me and said, "Can I ask why?" And I just said, "It's not up for discussion." We shook hands. That was the end of it. Is that something that you would suggest? Is that kind of pretty much how it should go?
Once you start getting into the reasons, oftentimes you may put yourself unknowingly in a box.
Right.
And give them, hey, you fired me because of this reason. And if you can link it to some discriminatory or protected kind of interest, again, not your intent, but that's what they, kind of get a hook in there, then it can,
Well, I think human nature makes you want. I feel bad for them.
Sure.
Even if I know that they're not a good fit for my company, or if I know they didn't show up to work, I still feel bad. It's like, I didn't. It's not working out. You didn't do this, or you didn't do this right, or we gave. So I've put myself in that position many times before, and now I don't do that. I just say, I'm sorry, it's not working out.
Sometimes the rules
just rip the Band-Aid.
Absolutely. Now, sometimes the rules the lawyers create don't make a whole lot of intuitive sense. In fact, I had a client who was asking me, what can I ask on the way in? And there's a whole list of questions that you would think are common sense, but the courts and the regulators have said you can't ask this because it could lead to this issue, and it's almost.
How old you are?
Talking about certain personal things, right? You're just trying to make conversation and ask about, what's going on with them and maybe what their family situation is and other things, and just kind of making conversation. And people would say, well, you can't ask them about those things because it may mean, well, you're trying not to hire them because they may be too old, or you want to hire someone who doesn't have kids at home so they can focus on the job, or those things that, again, you're well-intentioned, but unfortunately, a few people have abused those things, and it gets everybody.
Let's talk about, do you have any experience in medical marijuana?
I do not.
Okay.
Personal nor professional.
So I had a potential employee come in, and this might not be relevant, but he was recording the conversation in our interview.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And, one of the things for electricity, it's very dangerous.
Sure.
You don't want people on drugs or alcohol, so we drug test, and that's our policy.
Sure.
And until I figure out how I can tell if you passed a drug test today or didn't pass a drug test today, what does that mean?
Sure.
That's a long story. But during the interview, I asked him multiple times, can you pass a drug test, this and that, and he never foreclosed that he had a medical marijuana card. He just kept saying, no, I don't do drugs, this and that. And he was recording the conversation. After he left, he sent me an email the next day saying, hey, I wasn't honest with you. I do have a medical, this and that. And I took that as, hey, you just weren't honest.
Sure.
And we had found, I had a bunch of interviews that day. We had found another applicant that suited us. So we went, I emailed him back. I probably shouldn't have.
Uh-oh.
I emailed him back, hey, unfortunately we went a different direction. But I got a notice, said he was taking me to court, said I offered him a job, and he took the recording that he had of me and chopped it up to make it sound like I wouldn't keep something I said. What are some things that I could put in place maybe to keep myself protected in that situation?
Wow, that's not what I've heard before.
It was a crazy ordeal.
Yeah.
I reached out to my lawyer at the time, and I'm like, listen, I'm going to fight this. I'm going to win. And he goes, it's going to cost you $25,000. You'd probably be better off just giving him a couple grand, tell him to go away.
And that may be, oftentimes is kind of the solution. Unfortunately, you have these nuisance suits, as they call them.
Right.
I think the bottom line with this issue, it is really evolving. In fact, there was an internal thing that was circulated at the firm yesterday, kind of talking about our perspective and what we can do and not do on that. And even within our jurisdictions, right, we're in the Southwest footprint. You've got different regulations in
Right.
Colorado versus Arizona versus California. So it really is one of the most fluid areas out there. Employers are asking these questions. Like I said, it's not something I focused on, but it really becomes a challenge because you want to make sure your employees, your customers, everybody's safe given what you do. There's risk there.
Right.
And how do you mitigate that? So I think, as I understand it, kind of how it's evolving is if it relates to the job and their ability to do the job, like any issue, it could
Right.
be disability, it could be something else, then you can't be expected to put people in harm's way to be able to accommodate that type thing. But again, it's still subject to interpretation. So
Right.
folks should kind of check back, probably every few months, just to with their counsel, just to figure out, hey, how has this evolved? And Arizona's thinking about taking it up again, right, from a ballot standpoint potentially. Right. So that may change things as well.
Let me ask you, as far as when he was recording, he didn't tell me, and I come to find out that that's okay. It's perfectly legal to record a conversation as
Sure.
long as one person knows about it. Is that right?
In Arizona, that's my understanding, that each state's different, right? So you have to be careful, and whether you're doing it live versus a phone. So there's all these rules, and people ask that, on occasion, hey, what if I'm talking to someone in Florida, or what if I'm in an interview like that?
Right.
So there's different rules, but the best way to kind of go about it, and this is my kind of cynical lawyer answer, is, assume everything you're saying is being recorded these days, right?
Yep.
I mean, it's good advice for teenagers, let alone employers. But assume someone's got there doing what they're doing. It's unfortunate. And, kind of to your point about what do you say in the exit interview, saying too much can unfortunately come back to bite you, and you can blame the lawyers for making all these crazy rules out there, but that's kind of how you have to view it in some cases.
Yeah, no, I mean, it really, the principle of the matter was, it just really ate at me. And that took me a long time before I was like, the lawyer's right. Let's just figure out what we can do to mitigate our damages. And then for probably months afterwards, I recorded almost every interview that I did myself. Okay. So if that were to ever happen, I kind of lost track of that. And maybe it's something I should do, but, I think now I just monitor what I say and how I say it. And
yeah, I mean, it's in part what we talked about a few minutes ago, kind of making sure you partner up with, and obviously this is the first stage, these ethical folks, people who
Right.
are going to just do the right thing. And that eliminates, 80% of the challenges. People who aren't going to do stuff like that, try to be malicious, is probably the best advice to keep you out of trouble.
What should business owners look for when they're trying to hire a lawyer? Like, what, I mean...
Yeah, I think it's
because I don't know what lawyers are supposed to do.
Yeah, I mean it's we're not the the most exciting folks to talk to from an entrepreneur's perspective. Usually they bring us in after because they don't want to deal with all those legal things
Right.
and costs and so forth. I mean, I think it really comes down to finding someone that you like to work with because they're going to be a key part of your team. And someone who you can view being a kind of trusted advisor as opposed to a service provider. I think that's important because they're going to play a key role with your company, hopefully long term, and you develop that
Right.
working relationship. I think someone who's client focused, right? It's there's plenty of folks out there who are really, and we've heard a million of these stories. They're really focused just on maximizing the billable hour, or there's some minimum, cost they need to bring in, from a given client. And you want to find someone who's not kind of constrained by those things. Is looking to develop the relationship, genuine interest in the client. And has, if possible, some expertise in the area or has been in your seat, meaning, I had my own company at one point,
Right.
20 years ago. I've been in the entrepreneur seat, so that's helped me throughout the last couple decades really leverage that experience to provide both legal and business advice. So it's one thing to tell you how to do it legally, but if there's three choices, your next question is, well, which one should I pick?
Right.
And I think a valuable lawyer is going to be one who says, well, based on my personal experience dealing with companies like yours, I think option 2 makes the most sense. And so you want someone who's going to take that next step, which most lawyers don't like to do. They say, well, that's a business call.
Right.
And the client's like, well, why am I paying you? And so really it's someone who's willing to not only do that, but frankly enjoys that. That's for me, probably the most enjoyable part of the practice, being able to help you make the decision and kind of being a part of that team like that. It gives you the most value. It's fun for me, and that's, I think, the kind of counsel you're looking for. And someone who you get to the point where the cost issue is not an issue. It's really saying, look, I know you're doing the right thing, you're bringing value kind of thinking about it as an investment as opposed to a cost.
Gotcha.
That'll help eliminate some of that issue as well.
Gotcha. Let's talk real quick about retainers. Is there just a ballpark number that you guys like to have, or is it like a set standard, or
It just depends on how the client comes in. If we've got a relationship with them or someone they got referred in, it depends how much work you're doing. So my approach personally is I like to really, where possible, give entrepreneurs a fixed fee. Everyone hates the billable. I hate the billable. It's just kind of the bane of the profession. But
we contractors, we love to live by an estimate. We need an estimate.
Absolutely.
And then when you say retainer, is that similar to what we call the deposit?
It is. I mean, basically, we'll say, hey, if we're going to, do X amount of work, we might say, give us a retainer for a piece of that. So it's similar to a deposit.
Right.
And I think it kind of goes back to what do you look for in an attorney to partner with. These days, there's a lot of folks, particularly on the entrepreneur side, who say, hey, I don't care what the hourly rate is. I just want to know what it's going to cost me. And so I try to really bake that into most of the relationships, and it makes it really user-friendly for clients.
Well, we get a lot of, sometimes when a customer asks us how much we charge an hour, you can see their face go, what? This is probably the same thing happens to you, but when we provide an estimate, they just go, okay, that's the total amount. I don't have to worry about going over. Does it cost anything to sit down and have a consultation with you?
It doesn't. I'm always happy to chat with people free of charge, and as you mentioned earlier, we do a lot of free seminars.
Right.
Where you can come and learn about all sorts of topics. In fact, last night I did one on how to kind of those top 10 issues, legal issues you need to think about that can destroy your business. So those are always available. Good opportunity to just get some free content and kind of how-tos. But yeah, always happy to sit down with people.
You got that in a PDF form?
It's on my little personal website out there.
Awesome. How do these guys out there find that?
Sure. So it's just, don't make fun of the website, but it's just a little one I did myself. It's www.brianjburt.com.
Why would we make fun of that?
/events. I just did it myself, so I'm not.
I got
I'm
you.
not a web designer.
I got it.
I just put it in place for.
I'm like, why would we make fun of your name?
No. Put it in place for another reason, but now I kind of track the seminars. So we're always doing 3, 4, 5 a month, and folks are welcome to kind of come on and check those out.
Gotcha. Well, Brian, I appreciate you coming in. If you guys are doing anything, you need to at least talk to a lawyer. How do they get a hold of you? Just through the website as well?
Go through the website, or you can email me at bburt@swlaw.com, or just look us up on the website.
And we'll put it down here.
Give me a call. I'll be happy to chat with you.
Thanks, guys. Thanks for coming in. I appreciate it.
Hey, thanks for tuning in. If you like what we're doing here, subscribe to our podcast at iTunes, Google Play, or Stitcher, and to our YouTube channel to see more episodes. Go to upandtotheright.org to get all the links.